everyone seeing offices in Piccadilly. It's actually a very interesting project and very unique for the time, because in the sense of context, it becomes very clear in the project.
Welcome back to Kuwait in Focus. Architecture is a visual art, and the buildings speak for themselves. I'm here today with the researcher and architect, Ricardo. So hello and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So the first question that comes to my mind is, what made you so passionate about architecture?
It's a long story, and everybody has a long story on that. But basically the environment in which I grew up made me very close to architecture and very close to the social dimension of architecture.
And where did you grow up in?
I'm Portuguese and I grew up in the south of Portugal.
Oh wow!
Which is Algarve, where you have huge tourism.
Yes, definitely. We all know about all these different buildings, and I'm sure they've seen that, as you said, for tourism. So what are some of the difficulties that one would have to face or challenge once you're an architect?
I think the biggest difficulty you might face as an architect is dealing with the real world, is dealing with what came today, for example, in the lecture, which is basically the public opinion. It's being exposed, because a building is, as you said, is a visual element with a very strong relevance in the environment. So your work being exposed to the public random, I think this is the biggest challenge an architect has.
Yes, definitely. For architects and for different fields as well. So there is this comparison when it comes to old Kuwait City versus the new modern Kuwait City that we're seeing right now. So what are some of the different highlights you'd focus and maybe think that determines the difference between those two when it comes to the architect world, of course?
Yes, I think it's a very hard question to answer, because today Kuwait has two old towns, I would say. You have the town before the 1950s, that was the really old town, and you start getting also an old town, which was the town of the 50s and 60s. I can say that the town pre-1950s is basically a town that has no capacity, neither condition to basically respond to the emerging needs of a modern society that was phonetically growing in Kuwait. So it would be always very hard to deal with that at a certain point, mainly because the urgency at that time was very big to do something,
yes,
and to
definitely.
have a new life and to have new buildings. So I'm assuming it was always a big struggle. On the other hand, the town that was built in the 1950s and 1960s is a town that basically deals with all that unsolved problems of someone that is young, inexperienced and immature. And that town has many interesting things, which is basically what we discussed in the meeting.
Yes.
The relation towards the environment, the understanding of how to build a comfortable town under the sensorial point of view, not visual point of view.
Yes, definitely.
Building shades, protecting the people. Today, Kuwait is going in a completely different direction. I think the individuality of each building is not definitely assuming the responsibility of building a town that is comfortable for everybody and that it's for all. And I think this is the biggest challenge in the future, is how you will downgrade this sort of individualism or egocentrism about who builds the biggest tower or who builds the nicest and the flashiest tower, and the city itself, the city where everybody walks and where everybody has to live.
Yes, definitely. As you said, there's a combination between the old city itself still being the remains being here today, and the actual new buildings that we're seeing, that they're very big, they're flashy, they're really tall, and all that. So, as I believe in the lecture, you focused on a new project called Kuwait City Green Belt. So, can you tell me more about this project?
This project is basically a garden in the city-denominated area of the Green Belt. And it's a garden that tries to deal with, of course, the memory of the martyrs, because the garden after the invasion it was named or renamed as Al-Shreeda Park. So this project tries on one hand to not left that identity to be lost and that remembered, and on the other hand is also a park that tries to introduce a series of new dimensions of what is to live in a contemporary town. So it is a garden that basically tries to build the comfort zone that the buildings we were talking forgot. It's a garden that tries to integrate a program. So you will have museums inside, cafeterias, restaurants. So it's a garden that tries to be for everybody and tries to build a comfort area in the city for everybody.
Yes, definitely. And in the lecture, you actually described more to us what the visual inside would be like, and it just looks phenomenal, I have to say. So thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.